When we go into a new market to start lending, this is exactly what we do. We're going to break it down today. We have done this before, and we're going to do it again in the future, and we're going to go through the step-by-steps today.
Welcome to the Private Lenders Podcast with your hosts from Hard Money Bankers, Jason Dalen and Chris Haddon. This podcast is sponsored by hardmoneymastermind.com.
Hey, if you haven't done so already, go check out our Mastermind's most popular lending software, lendrsoftware.com. Check it out. The founder is a member of the Mastermind group. His name is Bryce. Just mention that you watched or listened to this podcast and he will give you a discount. All right. So we're talking about expanding geographically. This is a popular topic because now, on one hand, in any of our given markets, there's enough market share to grow as big as you want, as long as you're in a pretty decent sized metropolitan area. In my opinion, there's enough for almost all of us to get as big as we'll ever want to get just based on market share. We're only not even 1%, 2% if you're good, like of your own market. That being said, it is a tempting way to expand, to move into a new geographic area, to move into another metropolitan area. We've done it before. We've done it a few times in the past, and that's how we've added 10 million here, 10 million there. And we're going to do it again in the future. And we had a pretty good list of how we would go about it, knowing what we know now.
Now, keep in mind, the most important thing of running a hard money lending company, and I think it's not mentioned enough, and I think it's overlooked a lot, is creating a marketing machine, because that's what it is. You need deals. You need lead flow. You need lots of lead flow over and 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 over. And it's overlooked. Like, you got to have generated business coming in over and over and over. And if you're entering a new market, chances are you're probably not already in that market. Locally, you probably live somewhere else. So you need to, in essence, create some sort of boots on the ground or some sort of exposure for people to obviously want to get in touch with you. So there's lots of different things we're going to discuss here in a second. But important part is understanding that all of these things are marketing efforts to generate lead flow, and lots and lots and lots of lead flow. Typically, when you enter new markets, you end up being a little bit more conservative on the front end. So maybe in your local market, you're interested in lending at 65 or 70% based off the after repair value. New market, you might say, hey, I want to be in at 50 or 55 or 60 just to see how that flow goes, what the deals look like, how the process goes. And you need lead flow to do that. So number one is making sure you tell everybody in your current sphere and database that you're expanding, right? So let's say we were going to lend to just in Georgia, right? In Atlanta, I don't know. I'm just making this up. It's not an area that we're currently in. We would start off by telling every single person in our database, in our email database, in our phone database, we would spread the word. Hey, good news. We're also lending in Georgia now. We'd put it on the body and the email signatures of all of our emails that go out. We would put it on all of our email broadcasts that go out. We would obviously update all of our websites and all of that stuff to go out. And we do press releases of like, hey, good news. We can service loans in Atlanta now, right? And that would like proactively happen through outgoing emails at the beginning. And then over time, it's going to be on all our email signatures. It's going to be on all of our email broadcasts. They're still going to see that. And I'd probably even do outbound calls to our entire database that had phone numbers as well. Maybe outbound text message, maybe a slide broadcast, something to make, to really ramp up the process and get lead flow and the phone ringing immediately.
In the past, and as we like consider new markets into the future, we're not into any kind of rush to go into a new geographic market, but it's always something that we have our eye on. What kind of, based on just that right there, just putting the word out to our database, to our contacts, both in that area and elsewhere, what kind of quick lead flow do you think we'd be looking at? Because I also kind of want to back into
straight organic with no paid ads.
Yeah, before anything paid.
We would get the phone ringing within a few days with lead flow. It'd be a lot of brokers, right? A lot of brokers that were on our list that would have deals there. There would be a segment of our list that is has come from that area or local here that might have deal flow there. We would get the phone ringing pretty quickly just by being very, very proactive. And, and that's not even including picking up the phone and calling everybody and, and when I say call everybody, like, that doesn't mean like, hey, my purpose of my call is to call a Maryland real estate investor, be like, hey, by the way, we do stuff in Georgia, like, and they're like pound sand. It wouldn't be that. It would be more of,
Right.
hey, haven't talked to you in a while. Just want to see if you have any upcoming projects. And then kind of ease into the conversation of like, hey, by the way, is there any other markets you purchase, you buy in except Maryland? And if they're like, yeah, we do this, be like, oh, that's cool. And then I'm probably in the conversation like, hey, we actually, we've been expanding. We actually started lending in Atlanta as well. If you know anyone out there, happy to make a connection.
No, that's a good point. I mean, just having those conversations with our current contacts in our local market, I bet there's people that don't know where we lend already. I mean, we do our best to like put it out there. Doesn't mean that's anyone else's priority, right? Like if we were to talk to our local like DC, Maryland, Virginia investors and be like, hey, do you know that we also lend in North Carolina where we've been for a year or two? I'd be willing to bet that most people are not aware of that. And it's, depending on whether or not they're active as a buyer in that market, it's another thing. But anyway, all right. Yeah. Let's move on. What do you got next on the list?
Yeah. So there's 4 things. I think I kind of came up with like an action plan for this to help everybody. And there was 4 big items. I think everyone's gonna be very surprised on the 4th one that we say, but that was the first one. Okay. Let's go into number 2. So obviously it's, what's the best word? Communicating and networking with local people in that area. Now, obviously, the easy one is meetup groups, right? That one's easy, but like keep in mind, one of the markets might be 10 hours away from you or the other side of the country. So that's not the easiest thing to do is to go to freaking meetup groups and potentially show your face there on a regular basis. Now, obviously you could call meetup group directors and be like, hey, do you have a need or a sponsorship opportunity in your group? That's fine. But I remember one thing that we did early on, and we still advise a lot of lenders to do this now. And it might sound silly, but to us, it's always really worked nicely. It's calling and creating relationships with other hard money lenders. I think that's a very, very important thing to do because other hard money lenders and other private lenders are typically allies. They're not competition, right? Like I'll give you an example. We're in Maryland and one of the big cities around here is Baltimore. And we actually don't do all that much stuff in Baltimore. We're not all that active in Baltimore. So because of that, there's lots of lenders that only want to do stuff in Baltimore and they don't want to do stuff in the suburbs. Happy to trade off on that. It's good to kind of just reach out to see what other people want. Some lenders, want to do very, very high leverage at cheap terms. No problem. You're not gonna be able to compete with that, right? So pass those deals to them. They pass deals to you. You tell people what your buy box is. We do a lot of training on this because, like, for instance, our partner in North Carolina, right? He goes and he sits at meetup groups and RIA groups on a regular basis. And we've had to help him with coaching on, well, how do I compete with these lenders that are offering, high leverage, cheap terms? There's lots of different lenders out there. I'm like, well, you got to figure out what your unique selling proposition is and who you are. We're local. I'm easy to deal with. We're self-funded. There's a lot of good things that you can do that. And you can always, and we're also like, you can tell people you're their plan B script, right? Like go to Kiabi, go to that other lender. If that doesn't work and you need a local solution, reach out to me. I can get things closed in the next few days. So the point being is every lender has different types of appetites of what types of deals that they do. And it's good to, in essence, network with them.
Yeah. And so to add some more scripting to that, it's basically to see what possibly they can monetize that they can't typically get done on their own. So if you're talking to the institutional guys and say, hey, what happens that causes you to lose a deal or a deal that is in your pipeline that you're working on that you can't do even though you would want to, and see what they say. Maybe it's credit score. Maybe it's the, assignment fee is too high, whatever the situation may be, can't get access to the interior of the property. That's a big one for the institutional guys. And then on the other side of things, if you're talking to a private lender, ask what happens with them. And I'm willing to bet that one of the first responses you get from a private lender, if you ask them like, what happens that you can't close this deal and it's a decent deal and you want to, they're like, oh, I run short on capital. That happens a lot. We hear it in the Mastermind group. There's a lot of people dealing with private capital only to run short on money. Cool. Maybe send it over my way. Maybe if you don't want to lose the customer, we can do some kind of white label arrangement. I won't close it in my business entity. I'll use a side one. Like, there's stuff that can be arranged to create a win-win for everybody. So I think, and I remember back in our early days, in our first year or so, maybe year and a half, we went around to both the Baltimore area lenders and the DC area lenders and had lunch or happy hour or something like that with pretty much all of them, and created a good like working relationship that carried forward. Like, it's not like we had to hang out all the time or, go to dinner once a quarter. But creating that relationship up front, and then you knew these people and you could pick up the phone and call them and see what was going on about a deal, passing something back and forth. Maybe a borrower started doing some shady stuff that other lenders would want to know about. I remember that happening a few times. So for a number of reasons, it's a great idea to get to know all the other hard money lenders in a given market.
And here's the other thing with that. Like, listen, I understand there's a little bit of a level of competition on that, but I think they can bring more value to you than just compete with you, right? And if someone has similar terms to us and another borrower uses them, chances are they have a better relationship with that borrower and they should get that deal, and vice versa. Because if someone's going to snake a deal from you, like, that's not good business in general. But at the same time, you shouldn't just be very, oh, well, I'm going to not, disclose any of my stuff. I don't want to help them. Like, there's plenty of deals out there. It's good to help everybody in that stuff. The goal isn't for someone to steal deals from you. Has that happened in the past? It has. And, were we spiteful of them? Yes, absolutely. And we won't do business with them, or we won't communicate with them, or we won't help them. But like, in essence, there's a lot to go around, and I think lenders can help each other. And who knows, maybe even share capital, maybe even share deals type of situation. You never know where it's going to go at. So, I think that you get the point. All right, so let's move on. So number 3, if we were just moving into a market and we needed to expand and close deals there pretty quickly and really want to get our name all over the place, we would run ads. We would run Facebook ads. We would run Google ads. And we would start buying leads from connected investors, bigger pockets, the same stuff that we're doing here locally to get the phone ringing. Now, I understand, a lot of the marketing efforts that we always talk about on the show, we try to keep them as, free marketing efforts or low cost marketing efforts. It's going to cost money to do this, right? Chances are, if you're expanding into a new market, you're probably already pretty successful in your current market. So you're looking at this as a scalability tactic. So you probably have a budget in order to put money towards this, which you should. The goal is to, typically conversion rates and sales activities, paid and free, early on in a market are always the most fruitful and the most successful because, they're not stale, right? Like, people in our local market, oh, hey, I'm not going to call Jason, he's just going to make me put too much money down and, charge me 13%, right? Like, they already know there could already be a stigma associated with that, right? So we have to do other tactics locally, like, instead of wait for inbound, we do outbounds. We do a lot of outbound calls to get people back on the phone. But when you're in a new market, there's a sense of curiosity. It's like, oh, who's this lender? Who's this hard money bankers that's in Atlanta? I don't know them, right? And you're going to get phone calls from that. So we would blanket the area and do a lot of paid traffic to just get the phone ringing and talk to lots and lots of different people. And it also helped build out our database.
I also want to add on one thing to that, since we're talking about web marketing, and it's more of a longer play that we would do that a lot of other people wouldn't, is that we would start building out our organic search rankings. We would build out a page specific to that geographic market, probably more than one page. And we would start having articles written and other content made with keywords specific to that area, to the town, to the county, the state, of course, and make that long play, right? And then to keep adding to that, backlinks pointing to it. And we've had some good success with it over the years. And our SEO, like our organic search rankings, have varied. I mean, we've been doing this 18 plus years. So it's not easy. It's not overnight, but for our game plan, playing the long game as we tend to do in everything we do, that would definitely be part of it.
All right. So number 4, and even though I have not personally done this is my favorite one. And I've challenged myself to want to do this, and I haven't. That being said, it's a successful strategy because one of our partners in our other markets has done this, and I know other lenders that do this. but it's creating a local podcast to create relationships locally and to show that you're an expert locally. And the podcast it's a simple podcast. It's a simple process, and I'll tell you kind of how it works. So in essence, it's a podcast about being a local business owner and a local real estate expert, professional expert. And in essence, you interview real estate agents, contractors, title companies, any real estate professional locally, with two goals. Number one, to showcase their expertise locally, and also to use as like a front end business development for you to create a relationship with them. And the show would go like this, right? Now, typically the people that do this is they devote a few hours one day, and in essence, they actually have a daily show. You could do a weekly show if you want to. It depends what you want to put into it. But in essence, you do a 15-minute recorded Zoom podcast with them, right? It's like a show. And for instance, let's say you know nobody in that market, right? And you Google real estate agents in Atlanta, Georgia, and Jim Smith comes up. Email Jim, call Jim. Hey Jim, I have this podcast. It's called Atlanta Local, and I showcase all the real estate professionals locally in Atlanta. Would love to have you on the show. It's a 15-minute episode, and all you do is, in essence, just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your company, and what you can offer the city of Atlanta, right? Very, very simple. Like almost nobody will say no to this, right? You get on, push record. Hey Jim, welcome to the Atlanta Local. I'm glad to have you here. Tell us a little bit about your company, right? Tell us a little about who you serve, things like that, right? And so that's 15 minutes, right? It's an intimate conversation, right? On Zoom. If you're watching this on YouTube video, like it's same format that Chris and I are doing right now. And at the end, it's like, hey Jim, man, that's great. I'm glad, I got to learn a little bit more about you. And then you dig in, right? Like you have 15 minutes on, and then you have kind of another 15 minutes of just like building relationships. I'm looking at them. I'm on a Zoom call. And it's like, cool. Like, is there anything I can help you with? Jim, do you work with investors? You just work with homeowners? And they're like, yeah, I work with homeowners, but I also like to work with investors. Be like, yeah, we're a lending company. This is what we do. This is what our product is. This is great. Blah, 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 right? And then you post the video, Investor Local or Atlanta Local, and it's just a podcast series, a video podcast series. And guess what? Now you have email copy in your, when you're creating your database for your local real estate investors in Atlanta. Okay, well, now you have an email copy that can go out, right? Hey, I just interviewed Jim. He's a real estate agent specializing in foreclosure properties in Atlanta, right? Or whatever the case is. And that's your topic. You can put that on your social media. And all of a sudden you become a local professional in that area, even though you don't live in that area. And it takes time, obviously, to do so. But the important part is you're creating content locally, but also it's very important because now you're meeting other business owners that specialize in real estate investing and are real estate professionals that can help you refer your business. So it could go a long way.
All right, everyone, that is the pod for today. And keep in mind that this was all of the business development stuff that we would do when moving into a new market. If we're talking about learning to underwrite a new market, getting on MLS, learning the area, learning the foreclosure laws and everything else, that's a different podcast, which we should probably do. That's probably a good idea also to do in the future. So thank you for checking out the show. We appreciate it. Until next time, we'll see everyone inside hardmoneymastermind.com.
Thank you for joining us on this Private Lenders Podcast episode. Please note that opinions stated by all the speakers on this show are only opinions and not legal, financial, or accounting advice. Please make sure to always check with your own legal, financial, and accounting professionals. If you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast, we would appreciate it if you could spread the word. Make sure to check out hardmoneymastermind.com, the #1 community for all private and hard money lenders.